Hey there everybody, it's really cold outside. It's about -20 Celsius and the wind is coming in strong from the north, so we're not going to be able to get to the beach this week for an adventure. Instead, I figured I would share some of my favorite finds with you and where they come from. Now I know the shard that I'm holding right over here is just a regular amber brown 20th century find, everybody, but the story behind it is extremely neat and I wanted to share it with you because there's a really good chance that you could find a piece of this bottle out your way. Upon examination, the shard was a little bit too curved for me to be considering it a medicine bottle, despite the fact that it had this vertical ribbing on it, which I'm used to seeing in medicine bottles and poison bottles. But what made this piece stand out were these two little lines right over here, these little curvature pieces. Now at first I didn't know the origins of this bottle and where it came from. All that I knew was that the shard that I found right over here unequivocally matched to the pattern right on the front. Now after doing my research on the internet, I came to learn that this is a bottle of Canadian Club whiskey made by the Hiram Walker Distillery and Sons out in Walkerville, Ontario, now part of the Greater Windsor area. What's really amazing is these gates right over here are still standing right now to this very day. You know, I read that this whiskey was so popular that during the Civil War, Hiram Walker may have had a tunnel dug underneath the Detroit River to help bootleg it into the United States, and the government passed laws in the United States stating that any whiskey made in a foreign country had to be labeled the country of origins, and that's why this became known as Canadian Club whiskey. The very next year, I was out on the shorelines and I found this piece right over here, and you can see it's got a little bit of a tiny little ridged line on it, and I was able to match it to the gates right here on this very bottle. If you ask me what I'm drinking, I'll take a Canadian Club, please. I've noticed that people recover shards of these in vacation spots such as the Bahamas, and all over the United States this bottle is excavated as well because it was such a popular drink and it still is to this very day. Check out this absolutely stunning piece of yellow sea glass, everyone. Now, normally when I find a piece like this, a pattern would be enough for me to trace it to the origins of the bottle that it originated from, but this is absolutely no bottle. It was only when I looked at the other side of it, right over here, where I noticed that it's an extremely small, short little dish, and it's very stubby. You can even notice that the glass recedes in size. It's a little bit thicker over here than what it is at the base. I was almost positive that I'd made a match in my head and that I actually had the original at home that I'd pulled out of the rubbish many years ago. It actually took me more time to find the original piece of glass at home because I've just picked so much glass out of the rubbish over the years, and my collection is so full that it just goes into the storage sheds. But when I finally found it, I had the perfect match. Lo and behold, this piece right over here originated as one of these old ashtrays. It's an absolutely perfect match right over here. You can just see it slides right over top and it fits like a glove. Now these two became a part of my historical sea glass display instantaneously. And showcasing them down at the cruise ship pavilion at the port, I'm exposed to so many different people that come from all over North America and the world, and so many of them are just amazed at some of the neat little finds and artifacts that I've collected on the beaches. So in talking to all of these people, I've actually come to learn that this ashtray right over here was made in a bunch of different variations of colors. Some people told me that they had it in a green, and a lot of people even told me they had it in a purple. And what's really amazing about that is when I found this ashtray, there was a second one in the collection, and it's a beautiful purple one as well. This one over here, you can see the slotted holes are definitely more for a cigar, where these ones are a lot thinner and probably for a cigarette. It's hard to believe that these were sitting in a box on the side of the curb waiting to be thrown out, and I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. This is one of my favorite genres of glass collecting, are ashtrays, because they're just so unique and ornate, and there's so many different styles that went into it. It was almost like a hobby and a pastime for the longest period of time, and such a favorable thing to do. I'm really glad that it's no longer favorable because I was able to find these ashtrays in somebody's rubbish, and now whenever I'm pondering the origins of a unique find on the beaches, my mind draws to these ashtrays and opens the possibilities for what the find could have originated as. Not feeling so good? How about some milk of magnesia? When it comes to sea glass, there are so many different possibilities for all the different colors out there, but that really can't be said for light cornflower blue. Whenever I find a shard of that, I always attribute it to coming from one of these old milk of magnesia bottles. A bottle like this just captivates my imagination because it has so many different letters on it, and this little crest right in the middle, it opens up for almost an endless amount of possibilities that you can find on the shoreline, and that's where this next shard comes into play. Right away when I found this piece, it had the light cornflower blue coloring to it that I would expect to see from a milk of magnesia bottle, and it kept the lettering of the SIA, which you can see matches unequivocally right over here. Another thing I love about this bottle is right on the bottom you can see this one was made in the USA. However, I find them and they say genuine Phillips on them, and they can even say genuine Phillips made in Canada. And typically, because the bottoms are a lot thicker, you can see there's a heavy content of glass in it right over here, the bottoms survive a lot more than any other shard of the bottle. You know, the difference between a cobalt blue and a cornflower blue is the amount of cobalt oxide that was put into the molten glass batch. Then this piece of cobalt blue matches absolutely perfectly to this old Vicks bottle right over here. It even has a little bit of the lip on the top, you can see. It's kind of wild to think when you find a piece of cobalt blue sea glass and it's over an inch that it could actually be the entire wall of one of these smaller 30 milliliter bottles. They did make them in larger sizes, although the majority of the ones that I see out my way are the smaller ones like this over here that are 30 milliliters. This next shard right over here is a case of mistaken identity. When I originally found it, I dismissed it as being a 20th century pop bottle because of the color and the little pattern on it. But then I gave it a little bit more of a closer examination, and I noticed that it wasn't curved as opposed to it had a little bit of a paneling right over here, and it came upwards. Right away, I knew that this was from an old poison bottle. Lo and behold, I've got this original one right over here, and these ridges match perfectly right up to the paneling right on the side. As early as 1829 in New York State, it was mandated that bottles that sold chemicals in them have raised embossing the words poison not to be taken, ridges, and even little bumps on it. And then in the 1870s, the American Medical Association strongly recommended that these bottles that have chemicals in them are made in bright colors such as cobalt blue or emerald greens, and that they also have poison not to be taken and skull and crossbones on it. What came out of this recommendation by the American Medical Association was one of the most amazing periods of glass history, where these beautifully ornate bottles were produced with skulls and crossbones on them, neat little patterns, even bottles shaped in a coffin. And it's amazing to think that something that was so dangerous over 150 years ago could be something highly sought and collectible. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you liked this video, it would mean a lot to me if you could leave a like and even subscribe to my channel. I've got plenty more sea glass education and entertainment to come.